All right, everybody, welcome back to the Bearded Bible. We are on day 20 of, or chapter 20 of Matthew today, and this would be days 29 and 30 if you're following along in the YouVersion New Testament in a year. We're, of course, going through the John Maxwell Leadership Study Bible, and we have some amazing leadership call-outs to start with today. First, we're going to start with attitude. Leaders must focus on God's ability, not their own. And this is really referencing Matthew 20, 1 through 16. Leaders should often read this story. It describes God's grace illustrated by a landowner and his vineyard of workers. The workers show us how the leaders look when they take their eyes off God and focus on themselves. Through this parable, Jesus attempts to correct wrong attitudes. He's trying to address one, self-absorption. We grumble and complain about inequities. We focus more on work than we do on God's work. Number 2, compassion. We ignore God's grace, remaining preoccupied with the status of others. 3, presumption. We assume too much when it comes to rewards, forgetting that every blessing is a gift. And distortion. When we judge others as unworthy, we misunderstand that the entire kingdom is built on grace. And so you're going to see that with the story of the vineyard when we tackle chapter 20 here in a moment. But I really like this idea of a bit of an inverted leadership triangle. And I'm going to show you guys something on the screen here. And we're going to just read this together. The top of it is servanthood. Jesus teaches that we lead by serving and serve by leading. As Jesus makes his way toward Jerusalem to be executed, the mother of James and John requests that her sons be given a preferred seat next to Jesus in the kingdom of heaven. Both the disciples and their families have become preoccupied with status rather than serving. They have missed the whole point of Jesus' leadership. Jesus tells them plainly that his style of leadership stands in stark contrast to the world's. He teaches that the greatest must be the servant. Leadership is about adding value, not getting perks, the law of addition. As responsibilities increase, rights decrease. Consider a leadership pyramid based on these principles. Options and rights decrease as you climb toward leadership in the church, and I think could be said in most organizations. Then obligations and responsibilities grow, they increase as you climb for leadership. If this pyramid represents your life and the base represents the beginnings of your leadership journey, your range of options is widest at the beginning. The younger you are, the more liberties you have with your time, vocabulary, money, etc. But as you grow into leadership, you deliberately surrender those rights and options. Servants push for no options and assume no rights. So with that, let's go right into chapter 20 with a little bit of our leadership lens from John Maxwell. The parable of the workers in the vineyard. For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. He agreed to pay them a denarius for the day and sent them into his vineyard. About 9 in the morning he went out and saw others standing in the marketplace doing nothing. He told them, "You also go work in my vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right." So they went. He went out again at noon and about 3 in the afternoon and did the same thing. About 5 in the afternoon, he went out and found still others standing around. He asked them, "Why have you been standing here all day long, doing nothing?" "Because no one has hired us," they answered. He said to them, "You also go work in my vineyard." When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, "Call the workers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last ones hired and going to the first." The workers who were hired about 5 in the afternoon came and each received a denarius. So when those came who were hired first, they expected to receive more. But each one of them also received a denarius. When they received it, they began to grumble against the landowner. "These who were hired last worked only 1 hour," they said, "and you have made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the work and the heat of the day." But he answered one of them, "I am not being unfair to you, my friend. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius? Take your pay and go. I want to give the ones who was hired last the same as I gave you. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Or are you envious because I am generous?" So the last will be first, and the first will be last. How many times in life can that simple parable make me satisfied with what God has decided to dole out for me in my life rather than being upset that somebody else got something that perceivably looks better? Jesus predicts his death a third time. Now, Jesus was going up to Jerusalem. On the way, he took the 12 aside and said to them, "We are going to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles to be mocked and flogged and crucified. On the third day, he will be raised to life." A mother's request. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons, kneeling down and asking a favor of him. "What is it you want?" he asked. She said, "Grant that one of these two sons of mine may sit at your right and the other at your left in your kingdom." "You don't know what you are asking," Jesus said to them. "Can you drink the cup I am going to drink?" "We can," they answered. Jesus said to them, "You will indeed drink from my cup, but to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom have been prepared by my Father." When the 10 heard about this, they were indignant with the two brothers. Jesus called them together and said, "You know that the rulers and the Gentiles lord over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great amongst you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." 2 blind men receive sight. As Jesus and his disciples were leaving Jericho, a large crowd followed him. 2 blind men were sitting by the roadside, and when they heard that Jesus was going by, they shouted, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." The crowd rebuked them and told them to be quiet, but they shouted all the louder, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." Jesus stopped and called them. "What do you want me to do for you?" he asked. "Lord," they answered, "we want our sight." Jesus had compassion on them and touched their eyes. Immediately they received their sight and followed him. All right, well, tomorrow we'll tackle 21 and 22. But if you got something extra out of today, don't forget to make a comment, like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll look forward to seeing you back here tomorrow with more Bearded Bible.